Hello, I am Parker. I am 19 years old, and I am currently located in Ogden, Utah, and I use she, they pronouns. And today I am going to read for you a poem that I wrote called Baby Gay. Do you see the way she walks, like a lion from the den? Do you see the way they talk, like the universe is theirs to bend? Simple butch hair worn without a care, colorful back tattoos of a history of life, and a history of swords in the bag at their side. Riding the parade in a black motorcycle brigade, wearing a suit genderless and queer, the confidence of a ruler with bitchin piercings in the ears. Do you see the way I stand? There's pride paint on my hands. Do you see the way I speak, with the glory of my blue hair streak? I speak for a generation, a voice like fire, for the ones who understand, for the ones who inspire. And in the astrology of skies, I see a new future, ridding the scars that came from lies with a truth suture. In books written by daughters who were also college presenters and award-winning songwriters who identify as transgender. Do you see the way she walks, like a lion from the den? Do you see the way they talk, like the universe is theirs to bend?
I'm feeling queer today.
Hello everyone, I'm Eric Eubank.
And I'm Lily Muller.
And we want to welcome you to I'm Feeling Queer Today, the podcast that amplifies the voices of queer youth.
We started off this episode with Parker reading their poem, Baby Gay. The thing that touches me about this poem is that I feel like it's a pretty universal queer moment of you're younger and you're recognizing yourself in somebody else.
This piece delves into not just the queer joy, but also the idea of role models and idolization in the queer community. A lot of us find ourselves in queerness by looking towards others who have done the same and everything they've accomplished in their expression. And I really think that exploration of self, but also kind of perception of the world is a really powerful part of this piece.
Thank you so much for sharing it with us, Parker.
So today's topic is transgressing the binary. And I think when we consider the idea of transgressing the binary, or really just transgressing expectations as a whole, it comes a lot down to subverting those expectations and kind of flipping them on their heads. And whether that is completely turning them around and diverting them altogether, or leaning into them and transforming them into something that's personal to you, I think that ultimately the idea of transgression comes from inspiration and it comes from change, and it really just comes from breaking the molds that we're often confined to. When you think about your own place within or without the binary, I think recognizing that all of those ways of transgressing it and going beyond it are all very personal and in their own way very magical. So, Lily, what are some ways that you transgress the binary?
The one way that I transgress the binary that I think I'm proudest of is learning to allow myself to present however I want to or I need to. I felt a lot of pressure early into figuring out my queerness to present in a certain way that was sort of legibly queer. But as I've gotten older, I've realized I know who I am, the people that I care about know who I am, and that's good enough for me.
With that, here is Parker, who shares what transgressing the binary means to them.
For me, transgressing the binary means a lot of different things. The first thing that I think of is the way that I present myself, mainly because that was originally how I first started to discover who I was. And so presentation is something that I talk about a lot in like my poetry and my writing, because I feel like society has this one way that you're supposed to present as a female or as a male. And I never really fit into that category. I mean, I even remember when I was little, I'd wear like farmer's jeans underneath a tutu or something. And that to me speaks to a lot about who I am now, especially. And I did fall into that category of being super feminine and trying to like fit into something that I just didn't feel inside. And quite frankly, it made me really dysphoric a lot. And when I finally was able to step out of that and just accept, oh, if I wear boys' clothes, if I do this, how am I going to feel? And then realizing I can wear literally anything that I want. It doesn't matter if I wear a dress. It doesn't matter if I wear a suit. I'm still who I am. When I just started presenting the way that I wanted to present, it was the same kind of feeling I used to get when I would have a really bad day and I'd come home and something really great would happen. I'd put on a movie and sit on the couch and eat ice cream or something, or I'd read my favorite book or something like that. And the presentation is a metaphor for my soul presented on the outside of my body, if that makes sense.
On that note, I could rock farmer's jeans and a tutu today if I was in a pinch.
One thing that really stands out to me about what Parker was saying is the idea of presentation. That really struck a chord with me. For me, being non-binary, it's not how can I not be male or masc or femme and female, but rather just how can I be me? And I think at its core, transgressing the binary and just really being queer in general is about just understanding who you are beyond these binaries as a whole. And I think that for me to transgress them, I often just kind of try and be as genuine to myself as I can, because ultimately I see myself beyond the binary. So being myself allows me to transgress it.
And I think sort of getting at what you said previously, Eric, I remember at some point in our first season, we hear from Frankie who says, one day all the labels are going to melt away and I can just be me. And that's all what this is kind of circling back to.
So as queer folks, we know that there's a whole lot more that we transgress than just the binary, since we create the way that we want to take up space in the world. Next up, we will hear audio from the Future Perfect Project original series, Queer Youth Animated, where we will meet Fletcher, who is sure to cast a spell on you.
Hi, my name is Fletcher. I'm 18 in Kansas City, Missouri, and I identify as a threat. Everything in my identity threatens the traditional norms of what a good Christian American should be. I'm polyamorous, non-binary, specifically agender. Trans femme also goes in with that. Panromantic, I experience romantic attraction to anyone regardless of gender. Aeroflux, sometimes I experience feelings or sexual attraction, and then other days I'm just don't want to do anything. And being a witch, I think that's it for now. I was definitely queer before I was a witch. It's not that one influenced the other. Once I did finally have both, I finally started to break away from the person I was trying to be and started forming into the person that I want to be. To me, being a witch, it's respecting everything, reading a lot of tarot, doing a lot of spell work. Culturally, witches have always been associated with evil and very negative words and connotations. Ideally, you should not be a bad witch, because in witchcraft, everything you do will come back at least threefold. Very early into my practice of the craft, my friend was like, hey, it's kind of bad right now. I feel like there's something following me around. Can you help me banish this? I was like, yeah, of course. You do good for the sake of good, and then the other world just decides, hey, good job, we're gonna give you some back. So I often do tarot readings and thinking about a future that would be close to perfect that I would definitely fit into, how to invoke this question to the cards, because oh, hello. Sometimes as I'm shuffling, cards just like to jump out of the deck and pick themselves. So we have the shaman. The shaman knows his place in the world and in the tribe. So what this is telling me is, in this future, not only I, but everyone will have their place that they fit in, and they're not going to have to struggle to force themselves in. There's a place for everyone, and everyone has their place.
I've had a wonderful time getting to meet Fletcher through this little clip. What really stuck out to me about this, aside the great vibes, was the idea of doing good for the sake of good. I think I'll carry that with me for a while. And I was also interested in hearing more about the way that their spirituality or their witchiness interacted with their queerness. Expanding my horizons, Fletcher. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
And one thing that really stuck out to me is that there's a place for everyone and everyone has a place. We as queer people create the spaces that we exist in. We find and choose our families. That lies a lot in finding yourself and being true to that aspect of who you are. So we're about to hear yet another magical piece by one of our co-producers, Ari. Let's go a little bit deeper and hear them muse about their first queer crush.
The first real crush I can remember was this girl that I grew up with in the Orthodox Jewish community in Berkeley and Oakland, California that I was raised in. And I was trying to remember what this crush was like, and it triggered a memory of having written about it. So I went through the archive of my Google Drive and found a piece that I wrote when I was between the ages of 13 and 15. I'm just gonna read the piece of what young Ariella was thinking about. It's titled, I Remember. I remember meeting the first girl I ever thought about loving. She fell asleep while we were watching a Jewish movie on the couch. I sat perfectly still and felt her legs resting on my lap for an hour until my mom came to pick me up. We were on swim team together. I got to see her in an old blue bathing suit twice a week, and I told her her hair looked like driftwood when she laughed at me. I remember she told me I looked like an artist on the day I secretly auditioned for art school. I remember not telling her just how good it was to hear. I think that when I had this crush, I was terrified. When I met her, I was in the process of leaving my Orthodox Jewish community because I was queer. And it's really hard to talk about that because looking back, I think that I might have been accepted. Which is not to say that I would have been embraced, but my community would have accepted me, but it would have been conditional to their form of acceptance. I don't think it was really a sexual crush. I don't even know how much I was really into this girl, as I was both calmed and frightened by my desire to be close to her.
The realness of going into the Google Drive archive to find one's old queer musings. The part of this segment that I have regularly returned to what they said about the fact that they might have been accepted but not embraced. It would have been conditional. And that's a concept that I think I had understood and I had felt, but I had never heard articulated so clearly and understandably.
I think something that Ari does beautifully is find that one little phrase that just everyone will resonate with. As you were saying, Lily, ultimately what Ari was saying just really reveals the essence of why we talk about our queer crushes, because I think it goes into that beauty and that joy, that fear mixed with innocent and genuine like excitement to have a queer crush for the first time.
There's a flux between this is so exciting and this is so terrifying. And even those things can feel the same in your body. You're like, oh my God, my heart is racing, I'm sweating. It's like, oh, am I dying or is this the best day of my life? We don't know.
And as a retrospective of season 1, we're going to delve a little bit into the idea of representation in media and how, especially when it comes to something as complex as transgressing the binary, representation of that fact is not only more important, but also more nuanced and more powerful and more engaging and inspiring. So once again, let's hear from Parker.
I remember that the first time that I had like any even like subtle hint of my queer identity, it came from, of all things, watching Sailor Moon. And I wasn't interested in any of the main senshi, the main characters. I wasn't interested in like the story of Sailor Moon. I wasn't interested in any of that. But as soon as I was introduced to the outer senshi and Sailor Uranus, Haruka Tenno, my love, my gender fluid love.
I've got to stop bumping into you. If we keep meeting like this, who knows what might happen.
I love her so much. I love her with my whole heart because she went, and when you're first introduced to her, you think that she's a guy, and that's what they all thought. And they all had a massive crush on her. And I remember seeing that. I remember being like, whoa, she's a really cool character. But at the time I was like, oh, he's a really cool character, right? And a couple of episodes later, it's discovered that not only does she have a fantastic girlfriend who's like really smart and really intelligent, she also, and I quote, encompasses both the masculine and the feminine. And I remember hearing that and seeing that, and I remember thinking to myself, that's what I want to be when I grow up. That. Exactly that. And I kind of just went on from there, and it wasn't this thing of like, oh, I'm queer, oh, I'm gender fluid. It wasn't like a label thing, it was just a feeling of, yeah, that's me. That's exactly what I am. I didn't see that beforehand in really any characters. And I remember that was the beginning, like the full beginning of things. Over the years, it just became more of me like searching for that same feeling of how can I become that? How can I feel that confident about myself? How can I feel like home? Like it was me looking in the mirror and seeing myself every day, feeling that it was actually me instead of like this projection of everything everybody else wanted me to be. And so I searched for everything in like media and in books, and I looked at different authors and I read about different authors and I read about movie directors and queer people just in general, because I really wanted that same feeling and I wanted to have people to look up to. I feel like now I definitely am that person. It took a while for me to get there. A lot of different like experimenting with my hair, for example, a lot of dealing with things from my past that I just never looked at before, a lot of different like, oh, I don't have to be an exact queer stereotype that's like expected of me from other queer people or from straight people. I can literally be my own version of things. And so I definitely feel like I am that way now, but it was a journey.
Tell me, Haruka, are you a man or are you a woman? I'm confused. How should I treat you?
Is my sex that important? Can't you just see me as me?
Oh my goodness, Parker. The sentence, yeah, that's me, that's exactly who I am. That hit me in the heart. One of the most rewarding experiences I've had in my life so far was working at a summer camp and having a young queer person come up to me and be like, you're the coolest person ever. I want to be just like you when I grow up. And I was like, no, you should be just like you. You're so cool. You're the coolest person ever. And I think where this story that Parker has shared with us leads me is the importance of representation, especially as we're seeing an increased resistance to things like drag story times, but also just queer books in general, queer media in general, and censorship. We need these things to see ourselves. To a young queer person, seeing themselves in the media can be life-saving or life-changing. Sometimes the people that you have to look up to are fictional characters, and sometimes they're cartoons.
One show that I loved when I was little and to this day is Adventure Time. And both Princess Bubblegum and Marceline, I was like, I want to be that. That's really cool. And also, they happen to be queer. So that was bonus, cherry on top. But I think that at the end of the day, seeing yourself in media doesn't have to be a version of yourself you want to become, but rather a step in the journey of becoming who you are meant to be. So even if it's tangentially related, I think seeing representation in media really just helps in that journey.
Speaking of the importance of queer representation and seeing oneself in the media, for those folks who don't know much about the Future Perfect Project, we are an organization that amplifies the voices of queer youth, not just through this podcast or through our Writers' Room workshops, but also through a program called Future Perfect Records, a residency for young queer singer-songwriters around the country.
We're about to hear a wonderful and moving song written by queer singer and songwriter Katelyn Handy entitled CTR. For context, a CTR ring is a ring that features the letters CTR and the CTR shield, and is often worn by the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. CTR stands for Choose the Right, and the ring serves as a reminder of the church's motto and symbol of religious affiliation. So this song truly speaks to their experience with their religion and navigating their identity, and ultimately encapsulates the complexities of how they chose to live authentically.
Private school girl grew up in religion. Every time she talked, nobody listened. Always raised her hand and had something to say. Student government, a real go-getter. Teachers pet child, no room for error. Real her hidden, covered and tucked away. Life all planned out. What's your plan now? Traded in my knee-length skirt for a suit. Traded in my scriptures for gay YouTube. I'm not going back, I know who I am. I'm not confused. I traded in my cross for a pronoun pin. Traded in church for a life of sin. I'm choosing the right for the person I've turned into.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm Eric.
And I'm Lily.
And you've been listening to
I'm feeling queer today.
If you like what you hear, please rate us and share the show with your friends or family or both. And don't forget to ask yourself, how am I feeling queer today?
For more information and resources about this episode, check out the show notes or visit the episode page at thefutureperfectproject.org/podcast. We want to hear from you. That's why we set up our very own online voicemail box for you, our listeners, to leave us recorded messages. Let us know what you think of the latest episode, or tell us topics that you'd like to hear us cover on the pod. All you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/IFQT to make your voice heard. That's speakpipe.com/IFQT. And who knows, your response might just end up in a future episode.
The song you're listening to right now is CTR, written and performed by Katelyn Handy and produced by Bryn Bliska.
Fletcher's story was produced by Julie Novak and scored by Truth Bachman as part of FPP's original series Queer Youth Animated, available on YouTube.
If you or a young person you know between the ages of 13 and 24 is currently in a crisis, check out thetrevorproject.org for LGBTQIA+ specific support through text and chat, or call 1-866-488-7386.
To learn more about the Future Perfect Project and all of our free arts programming for LGBTQIA+ youth, visit thefutureperfectproject.org or find us on social media at The Future Perfect Project.
I'm Feeling Queer Today is produced by the Future Perfect Project with support from Radio Kingston WKNY, Kingston, New York. This episode was produced by me, Eric Eubank.
And me, Lily Muller, as well as Wallace and Parker.
Thank you to the rest of the I'm Feeling Queer Today production team. Ari, Alex Massey, Claire Florence, Trudy Pooks, Frankie Gunn, Zorian Edwards, Sam Smalls, and Sonia Mia Blanco.
Our theme song was composed and performed by Alex Massey and produced by Emma Jane Sislowski. Additional music composed by Alex Massey, Emma Jane Sislowski, and Epidemic Sound. Episode mixing and mastering by Julie Novak with assistance from Emma Jane Sislowski.
Special thanks to executive producers and mentors Julie Novak and Celeste Lucine, and Future Perfect Project team members Ryan Amador, Kiko Wan, and Aaliyah Jamil.
Traded in my knee-length skirt for a suit. Traded in my scriptures for